The Toronto Raptors just had media day, and there's no optimism quite to the level of media day optimism. Okay. Everybody is in a good mood. Everyone is celebrating their summer vacation, and everybody comes in thinking everything is going to go right. And there's one team in the Eastern Conference that has a lot of people perplexed about what they're doing. They're super expensive roster. They're very injury prone star player. Their second kind of injury prone star player. And maybe a little bit of a mismatch, maybe a little bit of a sense of too much roster redundancy. But everything we heard today from the Raptors at Media Day was things are good. Things are really good. They had a good summer. Darko had a good summer. Everybody had a chance to recharge. And the focus right now is playoffs. And we heard it from the most honest man in Toronto, Jakob Pertl, the man who does not tell lies, the man who cannot lie, the man who is bound by his Austrian blood to always tell you the truth. Jakob Pertl said, "We're gonna be a good team," basically. So let's let's get ready to have our hearts broken a little bit, right? Let's buy into the hype. Let's buy into the idea that this can actually work. And I'm going to tell you why it can work. Now, I've been on a quest, okay? I've been on a quest. I talk a lot about anchoring biases. I talk a lot about basketball evolution. I talk a lot about wanting to talk to people to get a better understanding. And I think that this last year, I have probably gone through the biggest metamorphosis in my own basketball journey in my life. Okay. And as a person who's watched this game for over 30 years, it's a pretty bizarre thing to be at 37 years old, to be having an epiphany about what it takes to be great as a basketball team. But that's kind of where I'm at right now. I'm thinking every single team, I'm taking a very different overview of it. It's partially because of the fact that I watched so much collegiate basketball this year, so much G League basketball this year, so much women's basketball this year, so much high school basketball this year, that the truth is, I have come to the conclusion that I think the Raptors are going to be really good this year. I'm going to take you through my basketball philosophy as to why they're going to be good, why this team is very unique in Raptors history, why this team will actually break a record the day they step onto the court. Okay. So let's start there. The Toronto Raptors, I was digging through this, and please somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. This will be the first time in Toronto Raptors history that the Toronto Raptors will start on opening night 4 top 10 picks. Jakob Pertl, 9th pick. Scottie Barnes, 4th pick. Brandon Ingram, 2nd pick. RJ Barrett, 3rd overall pick. It's the first time ever. This is a roster full of people, for whatever reason, one reason or another, that everyone has sort of just written off. I think it's a little bit of recency bias, right? I think it's a little bit of the situations they were in last year not being optimal. Was Brandon Ingram in an optimal situation? He missed probably the most time for an ankle sprain of any player in NBA history. And most of it was tanking related. The Pelicans asked him to sit out because they were trying to shop him and they didn't want to get him to get hurt. The Raptors asked him to sit out because they were trying to lose games. So the fact that he didn't get to play, I think, hurts his perception. Because if Brandon Ingram had come out last year and let's just say 2 weeks into his Raptor tenure, he'd started playing and he started dropping like 24, 25 points per game, it wouldn't have changed anything about your season. You would have had a slightly worse pick. Probably would have changed the ESPN ranking though, right? It probably would have changed how the fan base feels about him because you could have seen it, right? And there's this idea of, well, I haven't seen it right now, so it's not real. Well, maybe it is real. Maybe it is real. Scottie Barnes last year, 27% three-point shooter. Okay, cool. That's what you're talking about because that's the glitchy headline, right? That's the one thing you can focus on. Can we focus on the leadership growth? Can we focus on the defensive impact? Can we focus on him finally getting into a situation where closer to his prime now at the age of 24, closer to his physical prime, with an off season, no longer dealing with the birth of his child happening right around training camp, which is what happened last year, in a winning context with the best player. I'm going to say this very, respectfully to Pascal Siakam. The most talented player he's played with in Toronto is now on this team, Brandon Ingram. This is the most talented teammate he's ever had. That is frankly crazy and quite criminal, but it's also true. I think Brandon Ingram is the most talented player that Scottie Barnes has ever played with. And if there's anything I know about Scottie Barnes is he thrives next to talented players. That's not an indictment of Scottie. That's not me selling Scottie short as a potential A1 option one day, but that's not where he's at right now. Right now, he is a player that needs somebody to create certain space for him to do what he does. And that's really what it comes down to in terms of basketball philosophy. This is a 5-on-5 game. So let's go into that basketball philosophy. I love talking to smart people, man. It's my whew, it makes me feel good, bro. Talking to smart people makes me feel it makes me feel great because and you're gonna see it when I drop that interview with John, you're gonna see it because you're gonna see me in my element. You're gonna see me happy. You're not gonna see me frustrated. You're not gonna see me rolling my eyes. You're not gonna see me dozing off. You're gonna see me locked in and engaged. And I love conversations like that because they spark moments of contemplation and hopefully revelations. Let's talk about one of those revelations, which I've been sort of building towards a little bit. So I apologize, but I've talked about this a little bit in the off season, but let me articulate it about as well as I humanly possibly can right now. Okay. So this is, let me move my camera here and just make this a little less awkward here. Okay. So I'm going to diagram this out. I'm going to diagram to you what works and what doesn't work on a basketball court by using some of the greatest players of all time as a good example. Okay. So my text here on Instagram, shout outs to the people who follow PENSARE BASKETBALL on Instagram. I don't think basketball is that complicated. I think people hyper complicate it by focusing on way too many things. Ain't that the truth, right? The goal of adding more data points, more factors, more tracking, more numbers isn't to have some sort of information overload. It is to hopefully use all of it to get down to one singular thing, which is impact. The truth is, we used to be way, way more efficient in the draft. The draft is less efficient today than it's ever been before, as evidenced by the fact that most of the top players and the last few MVPs were not top 10 picks. Shea was not a top 10 pick. Jokic wasn't a first round pick. There's a reason for this. Draymond was missed. What is it that our information overload is missing that the eye test and a pure, deep understanding of basketball is giving us? Because the truth is, 50 years ago, if you wanted to work in basketball, you had to be a coach, you had to be a player, you had to be someone who is deep in the weeds. Right now, honestly, you got to fire up an Excel sheet and come up with a fucking data point or an analytic or have a degree from MIT. What does that necessarily teach you about actual basketball? That I don't know. But the true knowledge comes in the intersection of disciplines. And the truth is that the basketball people, the people who fundamentally understand basketball, when they are able to use analytics, use data points, people like Darko Rajakovic, people like Masai Ujiri, people like Bobby Webster, people who have playing experience, deep coaching experience, some sort of real life basketball understanding of how the game works, what historically has worked, what hasn't worked, and then are able to be intelligent and humble enough to use the data points to prove or disprove their hypothesis. That's where the best basketball stuff comes. So to over focus on bag work, shooting, size, vertical jump, analytics, shot charts is just overkill. Push all the athleticism down to one thing, one singular thing. How do you get it? How do you get to advantageous spots? That's all I care about. How quickly, how efficiently, how well do you get to your spot? It's a game of chess, man. But there's no waiting for the other person to make their move. It's like a speed chess in which you can actually make successive moves, which isn't really chess. It's more like jazz. So basketball is jazz meets chess. So push all defense down to one thing. One thing. I don't want to talk about rim protection, analytics, deflections. I don't want to talk about steal rates, block rates. I don't want to talk about versatility index. I don't want to talk about portability. I want to talk about pushing it down to one thing. How does your presence on the court limit or expand the things your team can stop the other team from doing? Okay. And this is where it comes down to the Trae Young is a bad defender versus RJ Barrett is a bad defender also, but a completely different level of bad defender. And one of those players can actually participate and the other one can't. How do you measure the difference between two bad defenders? How do you measure the difference between two great defenders? Push all offense down to one thing. What does your presence and potential on offense do to change the shape of the defense? Now, let's explore this with a couple of players, okay? And this is going to be interesting, I think, for people who have an appetite for deeper basketball analysis. I was talking with John yesterday, and he got really excited. And I love it when people that I really admire and respect get super locked into something I'm saying, like I'm birthing like a little brain baby for them, because there's things that I'm gonna see that frankly people are not gonna see. I do have a background in finance. I do have a very strong mathematical background, and that's gonna help me see certain things maybe from a mathematical standpoint, but that's not that bad because I do have a basketball background too. So here I talked to him about Shea, I talked to him about Kobe, I talked to him about Steph, and I talked to him about Shaq. But let's use a few examples here, okay? I'm going to use the first example, which is Steph Curry. Now, you think Steph Curry is great because Steph Curry shoots the ball really well. I think Steph Curry is great because he bends the court like cheddar, okay? Steph bends the court vertically. What happens when Steph Curry steps onto the court? First of all, his reputation precedes him, right? The greatest shooter of all time. That immediately creates a bit of a panic situation for defenders where they're consistently overreacting to Steph Curry. If you want to see a team where nobody overreacts to anybody, go watch the Utah Jazz. Go watch the Washington Wizards last year. Nobody is scaring anybody on that court. But Brandon Ingram, regardless of how you feel about him, regardless of how ESPN feels about him, I can tell you one thing: NBA players are not leaving this guy open, not for a second. And you may quibble. Maybe the analytics nerds will tell me, do you know that Brandon Ingram is less efficient on this play type than Cameron Johnson? It's like, okay, bro, chill. Put the calculator down. Let's not lie to ourselves here and assume that that even matters here, because at the end of the day, what matters to me offensively is how defenses react to you, and how what they do in their reaction does for your teammates and to the court. And again, let me give you an example. And this is a really weird example, but imagine the court that I have diagrammed here, okay? Let's say there's an invisible line halfway down the court. An invisible line, okay? And that invisible line is a line that the defense cannot cross and the offense can cross. So that means that the right side of the floor will be completely open for the offense, but cannot be open for the defense. Do you understand? If that were the case, if that line were drawn down the middle of this court, right on this side, if I could draw an invisible line down the middle of this court, and I could say the defense is barred from the right side of the court, but the offense is allowed on that court, well, then every single shot on the right side of the court is wide open, right? So the question becomes, as a offensive coordinator, as a coach, how do I create that? Now, I'm not going to create a rule where the defense is not allowed on the other side, but how can I shift the defense so that they're so imbalanced or off balance? Well, one of the things that I can do right now is put Steph Curry on the court, or Giannis on the court, or Shea on the court. I can put one of these mega star type of players who have that offensive reputation as heart attack for the defense. I can put those guys because, one, defenses are going to overreact to them, right? And two, the overreaction is going to create cheddar sized holes for everybody else. So when Steph Curry steps onto the court, let's just say Steph Curry doesn't have the basketball. Let's say Steph Curry does have the basketball. In this case, let's say he has the basketball. So Steph Curry has the basketball. He's dribbling up the court. One, the pickup point is way higher. Immediately opens up spacing. Why? Because the concept of spacing is, what is the distance between the two closest defenders? So now if I have a backcourt defender who has to push up on Steph Curry because they want to delay the Warriors' action, they want to slow down the offense immediately. Now, there are advantages other places on the court. Now, if I take a second defender, let's just say I put Draymond in the middle to set a screen and the defender gets lost. Now I have three defenders preoccupied with trying to get back to Steph if he catches the basketball. The three defenders will react on the right side of the court. Now, Steph becomes the ultimate decoy, but the decoy and where he becomes a decoy is very important, because where he will become a decoy will impact the spacing the rest of the court. If he becomes a decoy and a heart attack for the defense at 32 feet, now the closest defender away from those three defenders that are overreacting to him is probably 22 feet. The 22 feet between those two players is a perfect avenue for Kevin Durant, Klay Thompson, Jimmy Butler now, Draymond Green, literally any player on that team, Al Horford, any one of these players to just run downhill. Steph's a good passer. He's able to manipulate that. And so the question then becomes, how do you, as a superstar, impact the court? Well, this is how Steph impacts the court. There's another player who is quite great, and he impacts the floor in a completely different way. He can't shoot a lick, can't shoot from outside 15 feet. But Shaquille O'Neal is another player who impacts the court extremely well. Now, consider Shaq, right? Hang on one second. That's MJ, my bad. So here is Shaquille O'Neal. That's the defensive help, right? So you got your primary defender. You need a double team immediately because no one man can stop Shaquille O'Neal by himself. The closest I saw to stopping Shaq one-on-one was probably Arvydas Sabonis. Even Sabonis needed help. Sabonis was a 300-pound mountain of a man, and he needed help from either Rasheed Wallace or Brian Grant. So now you got two defenders immediately. The small forward, likely the small forward in the center, that are trying to cram Shaq. If you leave him one-on-one, that is a guaranteed bucket. He shoots at about 76%. If you don't contest it, it's not easy to just allow somebody, especially in that era where 2 points were worth a lot more, than they are today because lower pace, etc. You cannot allow Shaq to go one-on-one. So you got to give 2-on-2. Now, when Shaq makes his move, he makes it very quickly. So he's going to go, and the third, fourth defender, which is probably the nail defender, elbow defender, that area of the court, those players are going to start shifting towards him, which means attention is going to move towards him. Now, what is that doing for everybody else? What's that doing for Robert Horry? What's that doing for Kobe Bryant? What's that doing for Rick Fox? What's that doing for Derek Fisher? What's that doing for every player who ever played with him? Well, what it's doing is it's opening up space, angles, right? People think that shooting is the only way to get space. No, impact is the way to get space. Impact, threat of impact is how you get space. So in this, I've written, watch how much Shaq bends the defense just by existing. He's a complete heart attack for the defense. He's not just big and aggressive. He's efficient. He's quick. He doesn't waste a lot of time, and this allows zero bailout. Yes, the fact that he is an aggressive scorer matters because he's never going to let the defense off the hook. He's not going to let Vlade Divac off the hook. He's not going to let Joel Prisbilla off the hook. He's not going to let Dikembe Mutombo off the hook. If you leave him one-on-one, he's going to score 100% of the time. This matters. A lot of people on this team, in this fan base seem like, for whatever reason, seem to think that it's a problem that Emmanuel Quickley wants to score a lot and Brandon Ingram wants to score a lot and RJ wants to score a lot. That's stupid. You're stupid if you think this. It's a good thing. It's a good thing to have 3, 4, 5 players who are willing to let it go. And you don't need 5 Shaquille O'Neals. You definitely don't. You need people who are willing to buy into their role. But you definitely need people who are aggressive scorers. You need people who are a threat to score. And you need people who are an efficient threat to score where they score from. So, again, this is a game of win the spot. And Shaq wins the most important spot on the court every time. So here's a brilliant question. You say Shaq wouldn't dominate in the three-point era. My question for you is, are you functionally stupid? And I avoided using the R word for a reason. Do you see how much harder it would be to guard him if he had wider angles? And that's really what basketball is. It's just a game of physics, man. It's just a game of physics. The rim is so high. The court is so long. The court is so wide. The players are so large. Players move in certain ways. Now, here's a player that is often not associated with gravity, but I assure you is probably the greatest example in NBA history of great scoring gravity. And that is Michael Jordan. What is it that makes Michael Jordan so elite, so unstoppable? Well, it's a couple things. One is the elite first step. Initially, when he was younger, it's that elite first step, that burst. Even though he wasn't a threat necessarily from three-point land, he was a decent enough shooter. He could definitely pull from about 22 feet. But that elite downhill aggressive gravity plus his efficiency when he gets there, the vertical pop at the rim, the playmaking is what is most underrated about Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan is not associated as a great passer, but Michael Jordan is a very good passer. And I think anyone who's actually watched Michael for a significant amount of time would understand that he was a better passer, again, in my opinion, than Kobe Bryant. If you want to dissect what is it that Michael had that Kobe didn't have, Kobe had the deeper bag. Kobe had more counters. I think Kobe had a more refined game. Michael was a better player for a couple very key reasons. One, he had bigger hands. Two, he was a significantly better athlete. Number 3, he was a stronger athlete. Number 4, he had a quicker first step. Number 5, he was a much better defender. And number 6, he was a better passer. These are the things that Michael Jordan had that Kobe Bryant didn't have. So even if you can mimic the moves and you can copy all the moves down, that's okay. You're not blessed with what Michael could do. Michael was also a hair taller, just a little bit bigger. And the inches matter here. Don't believe what she tells you. Size matters. It's the motion of the ocean and all that stuff. But yes, size matters here. And when it comes down to basketball, your length, your height, all of these things, your angles, your speed, all of these things absolutely matter. Okay. And when you're talking about a player that is very misunderstood in this entire conversation, that's Dwayne Wade. Dwayne Wade was closer to Kobe Bryant than Kobe Bryant is to Michael Jordan. Is a take that I have said 5,000 times, but I'll say it again. Dwayne Wade, Kobe Bryant. There's the gap. There's the gap between those two. The gap in legacy is enormous. The gap in longevity is wide, but the gap in peak Kobe versus peak Wade is like so small. My hands are basically touching. The gap between Michael and those guys is on another level. It's a completely different equation, and it is precisely because of the speed that which he can attack. It is the efficiency and the threat of efficient scoring at the rim, but it is also the playmaking. And so how do you guard a Michael Jordan on the block, even at 33, 34 years old, right? 33, 34 years old, you can put Michael Jordan on the left elbow like that, and he's drawing in a second defender immediately. He has 2 defenders in the backline defenders that are shifting, and now you have Fred Hoiberg, you have all these guys, Steve Kerr, all these guys are just the most open they've ever been in their lives, and he's a willing passer. So if you're not going to stop him, he's going to score, and the threat to score opens up the playmaking. That's the point. Scottie Pippen benefited so tremendously from Michael Jordan. And it's not like Pippen was not doing his own thing. And I want to explore a Pippen archetype in Magic Johnson. So a lot of people think that unless you score 25 points, 30 points per game, you're not really impacting gravity. Who the hell talks about passing gravity? I'm talking about passing gravity, and I'll talk about Magic Johnson. You don't have to wonder how Magic Johnson would do in the modern NBA. You've already seen what LeBron, Jokic, Halliburton, and Kidd have done. Magic with an open court and wider angles with better shooters is an absolute cheat code. Great passers absolutely bend the court. And the ones who can score efficiently are usually the ones who win championships. I agree with this. And here is where I come to the Raptors. Okay. First of all, NBA history, as I said, the Toronto Raptors will start 4 players who were top 10 picks for the first time on opening night. That's cool, unless somebody gets injured, touch wood. Second thing, I would like to challenge you in the comments or in the chat if you're watching it live, but if you're watching it later, in the comments. Here's my first question for you. This is question 1. I'll give you a question 2 and a question 3. Question number 1. Can you think of a better playmaking team than the Toronto Raptors, where 4 guys are significantly above average passers? 4 guys, significantly. And all 5 guys are positionally very good to great for their position. I don't think Jakob's a great passer, but I think he's a very good passer for a center. Can you think of a situation where you can have your top 5 guys are all really good passers? Miles Turner's not a great passer, so you can kick out Milwaukee right away. Okay. Jay Huff's not a great passer. You can kick out Indiana right away. Neesmith's not a great passer. That's cap. I don't know how you're getting to Indiana. If they're starting Obi Toppin, he's not a great passer. Siakam's a very good passer. Nembhard's a pretty good passer. Who's their third really good passer? You think Ben Matherin's a really good passer? He's not a good passer. He's not a good passer. He misses angles everywhere. So the reaction time, the IQ, the speed of decision making, it's a really telling thing that Emmanuel Quickley, I think, had a close to 90th percentile passer rating last year, according to the analytics. Probably higher. He might have been like 91st or 92nd percentile. And I don't even think he's one of the 3 best passers on this team. That is telling to me, because what that tells me is you got a lot of players who can see the court really well. Now, think about the other thing, which is what is the most valuable archetype in the NBA today? What is the player that every single person wants to get? They want to get a jumbo playmaker. Why? Well, quite simply, jumbo playmakers are really hard to stop. Ones who can score are damn near impossible to stop. That is what makes Shea. That's what makes Luca. That's what makes Cade. That's what makes them what they are. That's what makes them so highly regarded. I think the Raptors have three jumbo playmakers. I think they have possibly four or five, but let's not get crazy here. Let's say they have at least three. I think RJ Barrett's evolution as a playmaker is probably the most underrated thing that most people aren't paying attention to. I think people see him as a shot chucker and somebody who doesn't read the court very well. And I think he's always been a pretty okay passer. Last year, I saw him become a very good passer. If he can take one more step in this direction, he could be great. The Lakers, who are they starting? Austin Reeves, really good passer. LeBron, really good passer. Luca, really good passer. DeAndre Ayton is not a great passer. Who's their fourth? Who's their fifth starter? Dorian Finney-Smith? I don't think Dorian Finney-Smith's a great passer either. So no. And honestly, if CMB plays, if he plays in place of IQ, and or let's just say CMB plays or Mobo plays in place of Yak for any significant amount of time, Rui is not a good passer either. So there you go. There's that. Oh, I apologize. Dorian Finney-Smith is on the Rockets. You are correct. My bad. Brain fart there. Yes, Dorian Finney-Smith did go to the Rockets. So yeah, Rui Hachimura is not a great passer. DeAndre Ayton's not a great passer. So I mean, it's fine. It's fine. But the idea that you have five players that I don't expect to miss an open cutter is very important. You have five guys who can spot the advantage. Very important. So that was my first question for you. Name another team with 4 to 5 significantly above average passers for their position. That's the first question. The second question, can you name a bigger team than the Toronto Raptors starting unit across the board in terms of wingspan? I don't say height because obviously the Orlando Magic exist, but I think the Magic in aggregate are around the same size as the Raptors. The Raptors have a legitimate 7-footer with a 7'4 wingspan, 7'3 wingspan in Jakob Poeltl. Their power forward is Scottie Barnes, who is 6'9", but he has a 7'4 wingspan. You have Brandon Ingram, who is 6'9" with a 7'3 wingspan. You have RJ Barrett, who is about 6'6" with a 6'9 wingspan. And then you have Emmanuel Quickley, the smallest player on your team, and he's 6'3 with a 6'9 wingspan. You have a really big team. Houston could be it. If they start him in, they're going to be an enormous team. Thankfully, you only play them 2 times a year. So that's another thing. So that was my second question. Here's my third question to you. That's a very good answer. Jalen Williams, Lou Dort, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, across the board in aggregate are around as big as BI, RJ, Emmanuel Quickley. Like if you just go add up their heights, add up their wingspans, that's the right area. If you start Chet with Isaiah Hartenstein, they're the biggest team in the NBA. You are correct. Here's my other question for you. And this is my third and final question to you. Can you think of a better rebounding team than the Toronto Raptors? You have 5 players that I believe are positionally very decent to above average for their position as rebounders. That's a good answer as well. Scoot Henderson's about 6'2" with about, I don't know, what is it, 6'5", 6'6" wingspan? Is Scoot about 6'5", 6'7"-ish wingspan? Denny, Tamani. Yeah. Portland, OKC, you're getting in the right direction here. The Cleveland Cavaliers, hell no. Better rebounders. Darius Garland, not a great rebounder. Donovan Mitchell's okay. Who's their starting small forward this year? Lonzo Ball discovering that there's clean water in Cleveland is my favorite memory from 2026 training camp for sure. Allen and Mobley are very, very good rebounders, but I think Scottie and Jakob Poeltl are really good rebounders too. So I think the Raptors rebounding diversity across the board. You don't have that one crazy rebounder. Nikola Jokic is a great rebounder, great rebounder. Jokic is a very underrated rebounder. Maybe his numbers don't really throw off the page because he doesn't play enough, but he's a really good rebounder. You have okay. Now, here's my other question. I'm sorry, I have a fourth question, a bonus question. Fourth question for y'all. How many teams have 4 players who can realistically run the point? 4 players in their starting lineup who can run the point. And if I really want to get crazy and put Scottie at the 5 and put CMB at the 4 or Jonathan Mobo at the 4, realistically, I could have 5. But let's just keep it at Jakob Poeltl. Let's say, how many teams do you believe have 4 players who can run a break sufficiently and effectively and can basically run your offense, be a point guard in a pinch? If Brandon Ingram was your point guard, it's a little bit awkward defensively, but it's not that bad offensively. He's a very good player. And what he said today really stuck with me. He said, I see the court really well. He's not lying to you. He really does see the court extremely well. And he sees it like 3 steps ahead. That's a really good answer. San Antonio is a good answer. De'Aaron Fox, Steph Castle, that's 2. Wemby can't run point. Who's their starting power forward? Harrison Barnes, Jeremy Sohan? I don't think they have. Dallas. Kyrie, when healthy. Cooper Flag. Klay Thompson can't run point. Cooper Flag. Kyrie. They have 3. I don't think their 4th and 5th starters can run point. You have 4. You legitimately have 4. You 100% have 3. I think you have a 4th in BI. So all of this put together is very important to me in terms of gauging this team's potential. Now, a lot of things can go wrong for this team, and I want to clarify. I'm aware of that. I'm very aware of the fact that many things can go wrong for the Raptors. But I also want to finish this off by saying any great passer needs 1.5 dominant scoring zones and a means of getting there consistently. That's it. More is better, but 1.5 is sufficient. So no, Scottie Barnes does not need to become Devin Booker to become a superstar. He's already found a dominant zone where where he absolutely demands a soft double, which is the post, right? The low post. Get a bit more efficient getting there, a bit tighter with the handle, work out the mid-range counter to about 46 to 51%, and it's pretty much printing points for the offense. And this is my point. You may see RJ as redundant on this team. I don't actually. I think RJ and Colin Murray Boyles are the guys who break this all apart, and I'll share with you why. Now, I think that every single team needs a sufficient amount of rim pressure, a sufficient amount of spacing, a sufficient amount of ball handling, a sufficient amount of defense, a sufficient amount of rim protection, a sufficient amount of point of attack pressure, a sufficient amount of screening, all of these things. You have players who are in a good place mentally right now. You have players who are talking about playoffs. You have players who are talking about Jurassic Park. You have players who are locked in. You have players who've been together all off season. You have a lot of reasons to be optimistic about this team, I think. I also think you have players who genuinely enjoy each other's company. And I think that's important. When it comes to communication, you also have at least 4 of your 5 starters are locked up long term, right? They know they're going to be here. There's an investment. There's no worries about contracts, any of that stuff. You have a whole bunch of young players coming up behind them, and they have been locked in, right? They have veterans that they believe in, and everybody walked into training camp today. All the players across the league walked into media day, and I think everybody kind of took a look around, gauged the situation, and developed, at least in their mind, an idea of what the upcoming season was going to be like. Is it going to be a drag? We're going to have a lot of head cases. Is it going to be a lot of drama? You may look at the Clippers roster right now and think, damn, that's a lot of talent. I agree with you. There's a lot of talent. There's probably no chance they're going to be a championship team this year with all the bullshit that's happening with that organization right now, with how completely disconnected that group must be in the wake of all of this controversy that's probably just feeling like a horse and pony show for everybody involved. That level of dysfunction does not breed positive team results typically. So it's all the soft stuff that people don't talk about. It's the chemistry, it's the communication, it's the buy-in, it's the contract situations. But it's also like, I'll tell you why I'm more optimistic about the Raptors right now than I was 24 hours ago. There's a few critical things. One, I am buying into Emmanuel quickly saying he's going to play off the ball. I'm trusting him when he says he's going to do that, right? Shout outs to Sheridan Forbes. Always with this comment, hit the like button, folks, for more great content and moments. Appreciate you, man. I don't know how many great content, how much great content and great moments I'm delivering, but I hope I'm delivering sufficient amounts. And thank you always for doing that. Also, big shout outs to all of our new members, all of our current members. We have about 110 members right now. Let's see if we can get it to about 200 members by the end of the season, by the start of the season. Pretty ambitious, but it's something. It's something. We're aiming for it. So, let's. The first thing that makes me a little bit optimistic is Emmanuel Quickly. If Manny Quick, shout outs to Manny Quick, if he is able to buy into this idea of I can do something for my starting lineup that nobody else in the starting lineup can do, which is, pseudo Curry stuff, right? Now, I'm not saying Emmanuel Quickly is this dude, but on this team, he's the closest thing you got to this dude, right? He is easily the closest thing you have to that guy. He's the guy who commands. You're not leaving Emmanuel Quickly home open. I'm just letting you know that if you're Bob Carrington, if you're Jordan Hawkins, if you are Steph Curry, you're not leaving this guy open. And you're not leaving it open at 28 feet, 29 feet. If he catches the ball at 28 feet, you're running out. You're reacting to it. The number of players that can force a reaction at any point is the goal of an offense. So there's the equation. Consider this court and consider Emmanuel Quickly without the basketball. Does he create space? Absolutely. Does RJ create space? Yes, in a sense, he does. He's probably the least, but he's doing something. Does Jakob create space? Yes, by screening. If Jakob is able to screen effectively by offensive rebounding, he is creating space as well. Because when you're a good offensive rebounder, you command attention. When you're a good screen setter, you create advantages. When you are a good roller and a very effective paint finisher, you command attention when you cut. When he rolls to the basket, it's not Shaq. It's definitely not Shaq, but it is something that you must react to as a defense, which means it forces a shift, which means it's going to force a power forward who's out of position to help a center who might be in position, something like that. It can force a miscommunication. An RJ Barrett drive. If RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickly's off-ball role is the first thing that has me, feeling optimistic. Brandon Ingram and Scottie Barnes, their dynamic has me feeling pretty optimistic as well. The idea that both are going to be playing in a winning situation, which they weren't last year. Neither player walked into last season with the mandate as winning. Both players care about winning a lot. They now have each other, which is more than I could say for what they had last year because BI had really nobody. Zion was half checked out, overweight, underweight, whatever. Zion was injured. He had Trey Murphy for a bit, and DeJounte Murray got injured very early into the season. There's a lot of people throwing a lot of mud at BI because he said some stuff about, Toronto, him being happy in Toronto. He just can't stop himself from saying these things because he was really miserable there. I don't think Scottie was necessarily all that happy losing a whole bunch of games. I mean, he bought into it, but to walk into training camp with this idea that you're going to be with this really young roster and we're going to play this really gimmicky style of defense and it's not going to work and we're developing this year, we're going to you got to imagine that for a player who wires his entire identity into winning everything. I want to win. I want to win. What is that thing that Masai Ujiri said in Scottie's pre-draft interview? He mentioned winning 47 times. And now you walk into a season last year where winning is off the table. We're not winning. We're not going for the playoffs. We're trying to develop habits. We're trying to be better every single day. I think he took last year as don't have a career-ending injury. You know what I mean? Just don't go out there and get injured. Take shots, develop your game, work out, things, try things. But the intensity with which this dude is going to focus on winning basketball games this year, I think is going to unlock some crazy analytics. Like, I have a feeling he's going to be touching like 6.2, 6.4 box plus minus very early in the season. And there are players who've won MVP with those stats. I think he's going to put up some MVP stats this year. He's not going to win MVP. He's not going to sniff MVP, but I think he's going to have some MVP level, all NBA second team level type of impact this year. And I think he has a lot of teammates who really respect him. I think, listening to RJ, listening to Scottie talk about how much he's going to help them, I don't think he's walking into a situation where it's a selfish situation where people are worried about how many shots he's going to take away from them. And the great thing about BI is one of the most misunderstood things about Brandon Ingram is he's so unselfish. I think Ingram is going to be the most willing passer in the starting lineup apart from Scottie. Like, he's going to be happy to let Emmanuel quickly have 32 points, happy to let RJ Barrett have a 25-point game. And this is the point. Talk about the defense. Who are you guarding? Who are you putting your weakest defender on? Who are you putting Trae Young on? So, let's talk about it. You have a matchup with the Raptors and the Hawks early in the season. Who is Trae Young guarding? Whoever he's guarding in those 4 perimeter players is going off. Easy. Dyson Daniels can do whatever he wants to Scottie Barnes, whatever. Brandon Ingram is going to draw a matchup that's going to be favorable for him. You push the ball in, and now you have smart, connective players who are able to find the advantage. So whoever has it. We play egalitarian basketball. Everybody for, the benefit of the team. And so now if I'm Scottie Barnes and for whatever reason I've drawn Dyson Daniels and I got Brandon Ingram with Zach Risachet at the elbow, I'm happy to let that go. And if all of this results in a weak side corner where RJ Barrett is able to attack a reckless closeout from Trae Young, if I'm BI, forget Zach Risachet, I'm giving it to RJ. And now if all of this breaks down, all of this overhelping and overreaction and breakdown from the defense has resulted in Jakob Poeltl being open 3 feet from the basket. Perfect. RJ Barrett is able to make that pass. It all fits. This fits. If nothing else, this team not making the playoffs this year would be a cataclysmic disappointment. I would be more disappointed if this team didn't make the playoffs than I was that the 2022 Raptors didn't make the playoffs. This team right here has the goods. They have a wide open Eastern Conference, whether Chase and Tatum comes back or not, whether the Celtics disband or not. Now, I think the other reason, apart from Brandon Ingram, Scottie Barnes, IQ, that I'm feeling very, very good about this season is I'm starting to believe that Grady Dick is in for a really big season off the bench. And if he is, in fact, in for a big season, you may have an ability to trade for something that you really need. I think Jamal Shedd's had an amazing offseason. I haven't seen too much out of Grady. Every time I saw Grady posting, I saw him with a random girl. I'm assuming it's his girlfriend. And I just kind of like, I don't know. You always see a guy posting with his girl, posting on cars and stuff. And you're just like, I really hope he's not taking this off season too lightly because all I see from this guy is just him posting pictures with his girlfriend. I'm not seeing pictures of him in the gym. I'm not hearing stuff about that. But seeing him today, listening to people talking about him, a couple people reached out to me and said, he's in for a really big season. And I was just like, okay, if Grady can come off, his value as a player is IQ adjacent. And he's also a really good passer. He's an underrated passer. I think Grady is a very underrated playmaker. I think Mamu is an underrated playmaker. I think CMB is an underrated playmaker. I think Jacoby's an underrated playmaker. I think Jamal Shedd's an underrated playmaker. You might be able to replicate this entire thing with your second unit too. It's almost like if you go for 3 straight years and develop playmaking every single day, and then go further than that and actually disproportionately target players in the NBA draft who already have playmaking chops, like Grady Dick, like Jonathan Mobo. They may not be primary initiators, but are good connectors. And then you go out of your way to continuously push away players who don't fit into that. Precious Achiuwa, Chris Boucher, etc. It's almost like you end up with a team of 12 guys who can all make this simple read. And I think Ulrich is part of this too. Ulrich is a really good connective passer, really good short roll passer. I've seen so much of this stuff in his NBA Africa tape and his G League tape last year. And so basically there's a qualification. If you want to play for the Raptors, you gotta defend and you gotta be able to pass. The only player that I could realistically look at and say, I don't know if they're a really great passer, probably Ochai and Jameson Battle. But whatever, man. Like those guys are not, those guys are barely in the rotation. And quite frankly, one of them probably ain't gonna be on this team, in 6 months. So you are a little bit away from contender, right? When I said contender, they're closer to contending than you think. What are the things that you need to get to contention status? Because you do have like the blueprint for all of it, right? You do have the pieces. You have the movement shooters in Emmanuel Quickly and Grady Dick. You have Jacoby Walter, that sort of slash utility wing. You have a couple of big forwards who are utility knife type of defensive players. You have a high impact, starting small forward, power forward, and Scottie Barnes and Brandon Ingram. You have a competent starting center in Jakob Poeltl. You have a movement shooter again in Emmanuel Quickly. You have multiple players who can play make. What is it that's moving you off this team being worse or better than last year's Indiana team? What is it? Let me know in the comments. What is so much better about that team? You think Miles Turner is that much better than Jakob Poeltl? You think Siakam's better than Scottie? You think, like, what is it? I think the gap probably is development. The gap is probably, guys like TJ McConnell, Aaron Nesmith, Andrew Nemhard, those guys. The gap is the refinement and the continuity and the experience level that team, put together over a year and a half of trying to be successful, right? Liam saying a true point guard. Okay. Do you believe that a true point guard is what really creates NBA champions in today's NBA? Please look at historic examples of the greatest pure point guards of all time. Steph Curry is not a pure point guard by any means. He has 4 championships. Chris Paul is the best pure point guard of his generation. He has 0. Jason Kidd only got 1 later in his career. He was the best pure point guard of his generation. John Stockton was the best point guard of his generation. Arguably one of the top 2 point guards of his generation. He got 0. I don't think point guards need to be what you think they're supposed to be, the quote unquote pure point guard, as evidenced by the fact that last year, the team that won the championship and ultimately did break all sorts of records throughout the regular season, they didn't have a single pure point guard on their roster or in their upper rotation. Shea is nothing close to a point guard. If Shea's a point guard, honestly, RJ's a point guard. If Shea's a point guard, Scottie's a point guard. If Shea's a point guard, Ingram's a point guard. I'm not disparaging Shea. I'm a huge Shea Gilgeous-Alexander fan. Please understand this is not slander on Shea. But in terms of just pure passing ability, in terms of what I define as passing, complicated reads, dribble manipulation, dexterity in passing, paint passing, eyesight, angles, all the things that make passing, diversity of passing, transition passing, all of it. There's certain players who are great in transition, terrible in the half court. There's certain players who are great in set offense or half court offense or pick and roll, but they're not very good as connective passers. There are certain players who are really great on the move, certain players who are really great on a standstill, certain players who are really great as post passers. I'm factoring in all of it. The entire, cocktail of passing, whatever passing is to you. I don't think Shea Gilgeous-Alexander is a better passer than Scottie Barnes. I don't think he's a better passer than Brandon Ingram. I think those two have him cleared. We can have a conversation about him and RJ Barrett. We can definitely have a conversation about him and Emmanuel Quickly. He's not a better passer than Scottie and BI. So having 2 jumbo wing initiators like Scottie and BI is a very big problem for the defense. Having a player like Brandon Ingram and RJ Barrett, those 2 are the weaker defenders in your starting lineup. Those guys are huge, man. Positionally, RJ is strong. Having RJ be your weak link offensively is crazy to me. First of all, I don't even think he is. But if you assume that he is, this is a guy who is going to be able to attack the 3rd best defender on the other team and relentlessly get to the paint. And unlike 3 years ago, he can make passes out of those situations. And unlike 4 years ago, he has players around him who will move into advantageous situations to react to what he's doing. So when an RJ Barrett drives to the basket, what do his teammates do? They just sit around and watch? Or do they give him better angles? Does Jakob Pertl free up and Emmanuel quickly coming off a screen as the RJ Barrett drive happens? That takes IQ. Sorry to say IQ. It takes intelligence. Scottie Barnes, he will flash, he will cut, he will create that space. How many times 4 years ago, 3 years ago, was I doing film breakdowns of Precious Achua and Kem Birch and frankly, guys that just like Fred VanVleet not reading passes. I would love to just go back and look at some of my old film breakdowns of just me ripping this team a new one over how stupidly they played basketball and tell you that I am just so bloody relieved that that shit just won't happen anymore. It just won't happen anymore because you don't have that tunnel vision player. You don't have bad players, and the other thing is you have intelligent players across the board who are sufficiently capable, very capable of moving away from bad situations on the court. So you're not going to have somebody, you're not going to have Brandon Ingram flash to the post, find a favorable matchup, and then Scottie Barnes cut into his spot. That's not going to happen. And I think that that is like very important, very important. So, like, you can say what you want about, what you think this team is going to be. You can say I'm gassing it that they're not going to be a playoff team or whatever, whatever, like whatever you got to say. Oh man, sorry. I'm just trying. I'm desperately trying to find like a little film breakdown, film analysis. See if I can. Where is it? Yeah, I got you. I got you. Okay. Welcome to what the Toronto Raptors used to be. Hang on one second. To anyone who thinks I'm making this up, I'm really not. Welcome to OG content.
They swat at it and steal it. Here comes Chicago. 17 seconds. 17 seconds from game 7 or from championship number 6. Jordan open. Chicago with the lead. Timeout, Utah. 5.2 seconds.
Shout out to my guy Goran Dragic, man. Okay, so here's the thing. I really resent that era of basketball, man. I really resent that era of, every man for himself. It was so inefficient. It was so incredibly obvious what Fred VanVleet was doing. I mean, and again, the reason that I came down so hard on Fred, Pascal, guys like that is I know for a fact that they were capable of participating in better offense. I know for a fact that Nick Nurse was capable of designing a better offense. And what he decided to do instead was to rig an offense to get guys paid, get guys numbers. And I still believe that to this very day. There's a lot of things that I've changed my opinion on. The value of Fred, I've changed my opinion on that. The strengths of Fred, the weaknesses of Fred, why Fred was the way he was. Yeah, there weren't a lot of players who can efficiently create in the pick and roll. Fred had to handle the ball a lot more than we would have liked. Yes, Scottie has his own limitations in terms of, you know, flexibility in that pick and roll situation. But last year we got a lot better. This year you have BI, you have Scottie, you have RJ, all of whom can run an effective pick and roll with each other or with Jakob Pertl. You have lineup dynamicism all over the court. You have multi-positional players who can guard few positions. You have players who can help into the gaps. You have three players with a 7 foot plus, 7'3" wingspan, and Bi, Scottie, and Jakob Pertl, who can seal up all sorts of space all over the court, be hellacious in the passing angles, and also offer a little bit of rim protection as well. Because Bi, again, if he commits to defensively, like if he commits to it, a 7'3" wingspan is a very rare archetype for a small forward. You typically don't get that type of rebounding size, deflection ability, shot blocking ability at the small forward position. And again, by aggregate in that starting front court, you're huge. Again, by aggregate in the starting backcourt, you're sufficient. You're a big team, and you may not feel like it, but you're a very physical team too, right? You got Scottie, RJ, these are physical guys, right? You got Jakob, he's a physical guy. Off the bench, you've got Jacoby, he's pretty physical. You got Grady, he's one to throw himself into people. You got Ochai, he's pretty long as well. And then on top of that, you got CMB, who's, according to some people, the strongest rookie, the strongest rookie Darko's seen. So all of this put together, it doesn't spell an immediate championship. It doesn't spell like 55 wins, 60 wins, whatever. But it does to me spell a team that has a chance in a playoff series. 100% they do. It does to me spell a team that should 100% make the playoffs. And it does spell to me a team that is probably a tweak away, and a year away. It might be, a very seemingly innocuous, not very impactful move. It could be something as simple as adding some picks to a player. Let's, not trigger anybody by adding the player, but we can all tell which player I'm going to say, for a Derek White or a Laurie Markkinen, someone like that. But the interesting thing is, what you have, you need. And what you don't have, you also need. You do need RJ's driving. You do need CMB's defensive versatility. You do need Sandro's shooting. You do need, Jamal Shed to be who he is. You do need Grady and Jacoby to continue firing and, hitting the way that they do, for your spacing to work, for Ingram and Scottie to have appropriate angles. And at the same time, you probably need an upgrade on Jakob Pertl at some point if you really want to take this to the next level. If right now you made one swap, one quick swap, a lot of money, but make a quick swap of Jakob Pertl for Evan Mobley, Chet Holmgren, those deals are not available, by the way. But let's just say you did. Let's just say you could, in some sort of fantasy hypothetical situation, you could swap Jakob Poeltl for Chet Holmgren. You are a title contender within a year. That's the tweak. That's how close you are. You really are that close. Scottie Barnes, Brandon Ingram, Chet Holmgren, Emmanuel Quickley, and RJ Barrett should be contending for championships in the Eastern Conference. It really is that close. So at some point, you will consolidate. At some point, you will move 2, 3, 4 good players to get like that one final finishing piece. And unlike teams like Cleveland that dumped draft picks to get Donovan Mitchell, unlike teams like, let's say, the Orlando Magic to dump draft picks to get Desmond Bane. You, as a Toronto Raptors fans, you as the Toronto Raptors have not made that move yet. And I remain very convinced that that is the greatest reason for optimism, is that you have a lot of flexibility. If you had dumped 3 first-round picks for Ingram, I'm not saying he's not worth 3 first-round picks. I'm just saying you now no longer have that flexibility. You do have flexibility here. You have flexibility across the board. And yeah, you're expensive, but you're expensive for a good reason, because you have a lot of really good players. And I have a feeling that these players are very underrated. And I have a feeling that they're going to really unlock themselves in this context. And I can't wait. There's going to be a lot of told you so's. I'm going to be absolutely obnoxious. If you follow me on the panel, I'm going to be super obnoxious. I'm going to be telling people all year, y'all sleeping on the Raptors. I believe in this team. Let me know if you believe in this team too. Cleveland, Bucks, Orlando, Pacers. What is that answering, sir? You think losing CB will show on the bench? No, not really. I respect Chris Boucher, but the number of times that Chris Boucher just is in the wrong place is unimaginably important to me. It also matters to me that he wasn't a very good screen setter. I think there's probably a really good case to be made that within a year, Colin Murray-Boyles can be a better player for your bench. Rob, which would have a bigger impact if Yak hit 2 3-pointers a game or swatted 2 blocks per game? Can he do both? I think the 2 3-pointers a game wouldn't move. It wouldn't move anything, actually, if I'm being honest. At 2 3-pointers a game, I'm assuming on like 32, 33% efficiency, like a Marc Gasol. He's not really bending the defense in any significant way. It's not like teams are going to suddenly start running out to him like he's Dirk Nowitzki, or even like they're just going to go under. It's not going to matter. They're going to be late. It's closeout. So it's going to be really wide open. The fact that he can stand there and do something with the basketball is good. But also when you factor in, unless we're talking like he's shooting them at like 55% or something like that, if he shoots them at like Marc Gasol levels of 28%, then it's not actually helping you very much at all, because his paint finishing is so great that his most efficient offense is actually more efficient than an average player's 3-point shooting. You get my point? Like, if Jakob Poeltl, like, spacing is so misunderstood. Jakob Poeltl is able to impact the floor. And this is, by the way, something that I have had to really think about a lot over the last couple of years and sort of second guess myself on, okay, when we traded for Jakob Poeltl, my initial knee-jerk reaction was, he doesn't shoot threes. We have Scottie Barnes. What are we doing? I'm not saying that if Jakob Poeltl could shoot threes, that it wouldn't help. I'm trying to tell you that the fact that he doesn't shoot threes doesn't cripple you as much as it would if a dumber player didn't shoot threes. Now, there's a couple of different types of, centers who don't shoot threes. I'll outline a few of them. Number one is the center who is a non-scoring center, a center who's just not effective scoring at all. He can't score from anywhere. And oh, by the way, he also doesn't shoot threes. That center is a spacing problem because teams just ignore him everywhere. There's the second type of center who doesn't shoot threes because he likes to take a less efficient brand of basketball, which is to say he prefers mid-range twos and not high efficiency, or, he's a player you wish would take more threes because he takes the less efficient of the two shots. Yak does not have that problem because Jakob Poeltl doesn't take jump shots. There's a third type of defender who doesn't shoot threes, which is the the player who is effective everywhere and just happens to not take threes. And that's really the Jakob Poeltl model. Yak is effective 25 feet from the basket. He is effective. He's doing things 25 feet from the basket. He is cutting into open space. He is finding, an advantage. He sets the screen on the roll. In fact, when he was traded, I made a comparison, and it's not a direct one for one, where I said he has a lot of Tim Duncanisms in him. That Jakob Poeltl is, like, in a lot of ways, a very, very misunderstood basketball player. And I really do believe that. Like, I think he has a lot of things. Like, I would love to do a film breakdown on Jakob Poeltl. I'm just getting backlogged with all this content that I'm promising to release. And I don't know if a Jakob Poeltl film breakdown is going to be all that useful. Maybe it'll be like a members only, like 2-3 minute video where I can just break down what he does. But it's so important to realize that, do you have utility extends to what are you doing when you don't have the basketball. There's a quote, I think it's from Billy Donovan, which says 95% of the time you don't have the basketball. What you do with that time determines your career. And I'm paraphrasing there. Jakob Poeltl can do a lot without the basketball. He can also do a lot with the basketball. There's also the element of driving. He is relatively quick for a center. He's not nearly as slow-footed as you would think. He does have that kind of like get ahead of steam and drive it down the defense, hit a little floater, or, he has a game. Like, he has an offensive game. You know what I mean? He's not just not looking at the rim. He's not a threat to score. You can't just ignore him. So he is like moving guys around. He's like, when Jakob Poeltl, like, I mean, we should definitely do a film breakdown on Jakob Poeltl, man, at some point. I would love to see it. Like, when Jakob Poeltl sets a screen on a guard, A, it's a solid screen. B, the angle is usually correct. C, he doesn't usually pick up a foul doing it. That release creates a separation. And at the point of separation, he has pretty good hands to catch the pass in the event that the pass comes back to him. And then he has a good touch. The only difference between Jakob Poeltl shooting threes and not shooting threes is where you can set the screen. If Jakob Poeltl could shoot threes, you could probably set the screen like 28 feet away. Whereas because he can't, you have to set it like 20 feet away. That's the difference. That's really it for me. So Yak is a very good player, precisely because he can drive, precisely because he has touch around 13, 14 feet, and precisely because he can pass and set screens. He is not your spacing problem right now. I actually think if RJ Barrett buys into his role, you don't have spacing problem on this team. And that's why I'm so encouraged by this team. Anyways, I'll talk to y'all later. Hopefully, this was a good dose of optimism for y'all. There was a little bit of negativity coming out of, media day, some swipes that were made, the Keel Augustine situation, the fact that we didn't get to watch all of Scottie Barnes' presser. He said some good things, and, he's in very good spirits. But, I'm excited about this team. I can't wait to watch them play basketball. And yeah, man, I'm curious, if there's a couple of curiosities I have about the season. I want to actually tell y'all. So I mentioned that BI, Scottie, how they were talking. That's one reason I'm optimistic. That I was optimistic that, Grady, I'm hearing that he's going to have a decent season. I was optimistic, of course, that Emmanuel quickly was talking about his off-ball role and impacting the basketball away from impacting the game away from the basketball. These were all things that I was very optimistic about. But there's one more thing that made me really optimistic, which is Darko's, again, it's confirmation, because I've said it all off season that this would be the case, but the confirmation that Sandro Mamukelashvili will be the backup 5. I think Mamu is really underrated, as evidenced by the video I made when we signed him. I'm a really big fan of what he does with the basketball. He is a 6'9" playmaking wing who can play center. And again, those are not players in their prime that you should be able to sign for a minimum contract. There just aren't a lot of players in Raptors history. Like, if you go back through Raptors history, if you want to like really, really slot and get to the nitty gritty, go back through Raptors history and look at every single player they've signed, and you will be hard pressed to find a single player who has signed on a discount relative to their actual value. You're either in, Damari Carroll, Hedo Turkoglu territory, where you're paying a fair to above average price for a player to come, or you're in damaged goods territory, where you're, signing a player like Hakeem or Otto Porter, where they are about to be medically retired, or you're signing just absolute washes and bums like the Jalen McDaniels of the world. I don't think that Mamu is going to fail. Now, again, I'm always cautious because, prospects have and players have a propensity to just stop learning how to shoot. But I think him, that Darko and him connection, the fact that he is international, the fact that he's grown up with this type of basketball, the fact that he's coming from the Spurs system, I think that this is going to be a seamless fit for him. I think he'd be a really, really welcome addition to that second unit. I don't think the Raptors had anything like him last year, other than maybe Kelly Olynyk. And even like with Kelly, I don't think Kelly was really like in his 20s anymore. Like a younger Kelly Olynyk would have been a really great thing for the Raptors, where he had a little bit more burst, a little bit more transition stuff, a little bit more defensive chops, a little bit more juice. I think what you're really missing right now, if I'm being honest, is a shot blocker. And if you could convert, let's say hypothetically, if you want to really cheat code this team, if you could convert Grady Dick, nah, fuck it. If you could convert Ochai and Jonathan Mobo, I'm not suggesting trading them. I'm just saying if you can convert those two guys into like a really elite rim protecting center and then kind of move CMB to the 4, I think you would have everything. And if you could develop one of Jacoby or Jamal Shed to be rim pressure guards who can actually score in the paint, now you got it all. You got a full basketball team. And again, I'm hoping for like a healthy amount of development from Emmanuel Quickly, from RJ Barrett, whatever. But the wider angles are going to help drives. The screening, additional emphasis on screening from Scottie and Jakob Pertl. Hearing things like Brandon Ingram's guarding 94 feet. Like he said he was going to do this. I didn't know whether to believe it or if it was ever, but he said it last year where I think at the exit interview, he said their emphasis is defense. They're talking about defense, and I don't want to be the one to screw it up. When Jamal Shed is on your team, when Scottie Barnes is on your team, when Colin Murray Boyles is on your team, you really have to guard. You have to guard. I've been on a defensively oriented team, and I tell you that shit is intoxicating, but it's also extremely convincing. When you walk into a team with loud, vocal, physical defenders and you don't defend, it's just like you really stick out. So the fact that Scottie is like that, the fact that Jamal Shed is like that, your leaders, and I'm considering Jamal Shed a leader in this situation as well because he's had such a leadership role with this team. Your leaders are about the right stuff. Your team is going to be good. I have a feeling. Jama, great presence. Darko, preaching defense, defense, defense. Everyone's talking about defense. And if that's the focus every day, the offense will take care of itself. I anticipate the Raptors to be a top 12 defense and probably a top 15 offense, which puts them somewhere in the 42 to 48 win range. Get a little bit better, get a surprise pop from one of your young players, be it Scottie, be it Jacoby, be it Grady, and you could be pushing 50 wins so fast, man. Y'all going to be great. Brandon Katz, the resident idiot. Toronto will never win with Pirtle at the 5. LOL. This is a dumb take. Look in the mirror, my friend. I don't like to crash out with people, but you are inherently like one of the loudest, most incorrect people. I hope that you will read some Arthur Schopenhauer tonight and maybe educate yourself on how much false confidence you have taken in over the years by not being checked. And frankly, you're checked constantly and you continue to yell into a microphone anyway. So, nevertheless, we got it. Pirtle can't space the floor or defend outside the paint. That's not true. Spacing the floor is not simply putting, jumpers on the, to be able to shoot from 25 feet. Marc Gasol led the league in 2019 in open jumpers, open three-pointers. His three-pointers weren't doing anything. It was his connective playmaking. Now, I don't think Jakob is nearly the defender that Marc Gasol was, but I also think Marc Gasol wasn't nearly the efficient paint finisher that Jakob is. He wasn't nearly the transition player that Jakob is. You are comparing Gasol to Pirtle? Sure I am. They're both Toronto Raptors centers. I think Pirtle would be a really good player for the Raptors this year. No, I don't think he's as good as Marc Gasol. I don't think he's ever going to be as good as Marc Gasol. I know that. But that all being said, if Jakob Pirtle is a starting center, there's nothing that tells me you cannot win a championship. That's cap. Talk to y'all later, man. Peace.